One of the most common questions I get from retirees is, I've saved over $1 million, why can't I retire? So in today's video, I'm going to walk you through this exact situation, breaking down why someone aged 60 with $1.9 million can't retire. With over 15 years of experience working with retirees, I've pretty much handled every retirement situation you can think of, and I can tell you for most retirees, retirement is way closer than you think, but there are some specific conditions that you need to be aware of before making the transition, which is exactly why we're making this video to break down the actual decision-making process with a real-world example. So let's get into the video. All right, so let me pull my financial planning software up here for you guys so you can see it and you can work along with me. Now, first I want to just go through the major assumptions that are going into this, and then we'll actually get into the retirement analysis aspect of it. So we've got Mark and Sue here. Mark is 60, Sue is 63, and Sue, no matter what happens, is going to retire at the end of this year. Mark would also like to join her. And so that's the big question is, can I retire? I'm 60. Can I also retire and then just be done? And like I said in the beginning of the video, they have about $1.9 million in investable assets. So the bulk of that comes from Mark has about $1.2 million in his 401k. Sue has about $700,000 in an IRA. Their other assets, you've got a home worth $700,000 and a couple vehicles, net worth about $65,000. They're in pretty good shape in that they have no debt. Their home is now paid off, and for the most part, they're done funding. Their children are adults. They're done with schooling. They got a couple other obligations they want, more like gifting for the kids, and so we'll talk about that here in a second, but generally, pretty clean balance sheet and in good shape. The question really is going to come down to, do they have enough funds to really both retire right now? Let me hop over here to the expenses. Right now, their pre-retirement expenses, just sort of lumped together, are about $8,000 a month. That doesn't include taxes or things like healthcare. All right, so in the goals here, I want to show you, I bumped up their retirement expense $1,000 a month to give them more padding. We've got their annual healthcare out-of-pocket cost, $6,000 a year. We assume long-term care, that's going to come out to the national average of $68,000 a year. We assume both of them have that for 2 years at the end of their lives for in-home care costs. The big things are going to be, we've got some new cars. We'll expect new cars to come out at net $30,000. We've got a vacation goal, and then we've got a couple of house down payments. So they want to gift $100,000 to each of their daughters sometime in the next 10 years. And then, as I was saying with these goals, so this kind of charts out. And then we've got this lifestyle vacation. So the big thing for these guys is going to be spending $25,000 a year on vacation for the family for the next 10 years. And before we move on, I kind of want to get into this. So, I want to share a quick story about a client I have who, recently came to me, and he's second guessing if his retirement savings are enough. And what's interesting, he actually has more investable assets than both of Mark and Sue, and he's older. So our original plan was, hey, you're going to retire in the summer once you hit full retirement age for Social Security. And, all of a sudden I get this call and he's really panicked, and it became clear it's the real challenge wasn't about the numbers. It was whether or not he was ready for the uncertainty to come. And he's really struggling with the fact that he's not going to have income from a job. And he's worried that, oh man, I might not be able to work in the same field again. Once I retire, that might be it. And so I want to mention, a lot of people focus so much on building their nest egg that they forget to kind of step back and check if their retirement plan aligns with the lifestyle and financial goals that they really want to achieve. So my advice to all clients that I start to work with is first focus on the why and then move to the how. And so this is where I had to go back to with this client and go, hey, remember why you're retiring. They don't appreciate you. It's a grind. you hate it, and you're much more comfortable with your life down in Florida. It's a thing that really makes you happy. It's a thing I have to go back and get him focused on, and then we restart the how, which it's very easy for me to show him how we're going to make sure that he's got all the income that he needs despite not having a job anymore. And so, my point for all of you is if you need some initial help getting started and discovering your own why and how to achieve that, I've set an opportunity to register for a completely free retirement assessment where I'll review your exact situation, no strings attached. If you want to get started, just click the link below and you can do that. But now let's go back to these guys. So, I bring this up because that's really part of their why, right? Why do you want to retire right now? Well, I want to spend more time while I'm healthy with my family. And so that's the big driver. And now we have to figure out, well, okay, if that's the case, how can we get there? So let me go into the actual retirement analysis, and I'm going to show you guys a few other assumptions and clarify some things, and then we'll really get into it. Now, the first thing you may notice is the probability of success is 25%. This is a Monte Carlo simulation. I don't want to get hung up on this, and we don't need to focus a lot of time and effort on it. Monte Carlo simulations for retirement are very flawed. There's research that backs it up. And the truth is, your life is not a Monte Carlo simulation. You don't get to keep spinning the wheel until you hit some median retirement number. You get one chance at it, and life just doesn't unfold like that. So let's not get hung up on it. Now, we're going to use it for one very specific purpose, and that is going to be we're going to change the variables, and we're going to see how that impacts the probability. So if we get a meaningful change, like 5 or 10% in the probability of success, then we now know, okay, we can focus here. That's an action that's probably worth exploring. But yes, first things first, a 25% probability of success isn't great, but it's not the only thing we care about. The thing that I'm more focused on, I want to go out here and I'm going to look at the cash flows. And what I want to see is how long do their assets last? I expected them to live to age 90, and their assets run out when Mark is 86 and Sue is 89. So it's a little bit early. Not bad, but ideally you want more padding than this. So let me go back to the analysis, and let's first focus on, okay, why are they falling short despite the assets? And I think you're going to find that part of it is unexpected. So I'm going to get to that in just a second. But first and foremost, I think the obvious thing is simply the expenses. The problem on the expense front is that many expenses, you just simply can't magically reduce them. Yes, these guys have a lot of equity from their home. They could sell it and downsize, but they don't want to. So we don't want to go down that path. So most of their expenses are going to stay relatively the same. There's not a lot of areas outside of the travel. But that's their big thing, right? They want to actually spend time traveling. And so we want to try and keep that in there if we can. Now, the thing that's probably not obvious about this is that if that $1.9 million were in a regular taxable brokerage account, meaning they've already paid taxes on it, but they just have capital gains and interest income in there, they would be in a far stronger position. I'm going to go back and change it just to show you guys what that would look like. All right, so I just went in and I changed it. The only difference I made was instead of them having $1.9 million in pre-tax accounts, and that means everything they would draw, they're going to have to pay taxes on at ordinary income tax rate. So one thing that's blowing up their expenses that I said is not obvious is that they're going to have to pay a ton of taxes. And a lot of Americans are in this situation where the bulk of their savings is in a tax deferred account, and 1.9 million isn't really 1.9 million because you're sitting on a massive tax liability. So just from that one simple change alone, look at how much the probability of success jumped up. But again, going back to how long the money actually lasts, jump down here. Aha. Now we pretty much made it the entire time, right? They had 382,000, almost made it all the way out to the end of age 90, just from that one simple change. So one takeaway that you should have if you're watching this video and you're not quite retired yet, if all of your savings is in a 401k and you've got maybe, 8 to 10 years left, you need to think about starting to save outside of that 401k. And you need to think about strategies that can mitigate the tax impact of having everything there before it's too late. For these guys, there's really not a lot they can do because they're right there on the cusp. So ideally, they had come to me 5 to 8 years before. Something that a lot of planners talk about all the time is doing something called a Roth conversion. And because these guys have virtually no money outside of those pre-tax accounts, they're really not going to get a lot of bang for their buck out of Roth conversions, but it's not the end of the world. Just one thing. Okay, so I've gone back, I've changed it back to the actual scenario where the bulk of their money is in pre-tax retirement accounts, and we're going to see what else works here. And for them, there's really a very obvious scenario where don't make these down payments or spend less on your vacation goals, and that's going to be a huge difference. I mean, let's see, even if we just got rid of one down payment, that's $100,000 less. Right, that gets us to 30%. What if we only spent $10,000 extra per year? And there you go. I mean, they're even better off than if all of the money was in a taxable brokerage account. So just those two things. But here's the deal. They don't want to make those changes. The traveling and the down payment are critical parts of their plan. And so they can still travel for 10 years at retirement. And they're definitely going to give their daughters $100,000 each for a down payment. So that really doesn't leave us with a lot of room to do much else. The true path to success here is really going to be Mark is going to have to work longer. And, they're fine with that. So let me show you what happens if Mark instead goes to age 65. I'll refresh that. All the way to 69%. And more importantly, let's look at how long the assets last. I go out here. Right. You've got about $3.7 million. That's a huge difference, guys. The truth is, maybe he's just going to have to work longer if you don't want to give everything up. Let's see what happens at age 63. Still 54%. Not bad. And again, don't focus too much on that probability. Let's look at the cash flows. Invested assets. You got about $1.6 million at life's end. Much stronger position than when we started, and that's literally working. I mean, he's going to be 61, so that's just, a couple more years of work for him. Something else we haven't considered here is contributions. I had zeroed out his 401k contribution, so another area to look at, and we already touched on this, should I be saving in my 401k? Should I save in a taxable account? He has a Roth and HSA too, and so ideally, we test all of them and see where do you get your biggest bang for the buck, and then we outline a savings plan over the next couple of years. I'm just going to show you guys a couple different variable changes. So first off, if we put $30,000 in his 401k, he could actually put a little more because he's age 60 and there's a weird super catch up between age 60 and 63, but let's not get too focused on that. It's only a few thousand extra dollars. It did jump up our probability of success by 4%. And then let's look at the cash flows at life's end. Now you're up to 2.2. So that's a big deal. Just for like a few more years of savings, it's really added up. So we're back in the retirement analysis. There's a few other things that I'll mention here. I don't want to go into deep detail on them, but one is Social Security. Normally we would play with the variable and see, is it better to start taking it earlier? Sue can take it now. Maybe she starts now and Mark starts at his full retirement age. Maybe they both wait until 70 to max that out. That's another situation that we can't just blindly give an answer to without running the math. That's going to depend on where are they pulling their money from and what's their rate of return. I'm not going to do it in today's video because I don't want to get hung up on all the details. I just kind of want you guys to see the big picture. Something else to think about are the investment returns. I generally want to be relatively conservative. Right now, their return is about 7% per year. I think that's realistic based on their risk tolerance and historical returns. I would encourage you never to assume you're going to earn 10% plus a year. In fact, you might even want to assume 6% or something. But given their risk tolerance and their allocation, I think it's totally fine to just leave them at 7%. It's completely reasonable. Now, another area where I've seen people with what looks like on paper plenty of money to retire, but they were actually unable to, is they're way too conservative with their investments. So I just want to show you the impact. So I'm going to take this back down to 60, going to wipe out the 30,000. We're back to our baseline. Look at what happens if we went from 7% to this preservation mode, which is a 4.6% annualized return. You have a 1% probability of success. That's a huge change. Let's go to our cash flows. And what do we got? They run out of money at age 76 and 79. Not good. So if you are a super conservative investor and you simply cannot handle any volatility, you're going to have to come up with other ways of dealing with it. And that also might mean, well, you're going to have to work longer because you're too conservative as an investor. To me, the important lessons here are everybody's situation is going to be different, and start planning for this transition sooner than later. Meaning, yeah, if you're, 5 to 10 years out, I would start getting a game plan together rather than waiting until you're right there on the cusp. Because unfortunately for these guys, they kind of waited too late. And I think had we just had 5 more years of savings goals and kind of optimized for everything, they'd be in a stronger spot and they could probably get it done. Most people will fall into the trap of watching content about why their retirement is doomed due to the latest retirement crisis, or why they can retire tomorrow using a magic savings rule. But, in my 15 years of operating, I've never encountered a situation where generalized advice like this is going to work the way that people think it does. And now, this isn't to say don't watch content. I think there's plenty of nuggets you can take from these places, but it is to say make sure you're informed about your situation so that you know what advice is truly applicable to you. And as I mentioned earlier in the video, if you need help with that, I've created a free retirement assessment review where you can speak directly with me about your situation. And on the call, we'll step through your exact situation and make sure you get complete clarity on what your next steps are so that you can make sure you take the best step forward. And, if you want to get that set up, click the link in the description to get started. And that's it. I hope you found the video helpful. Thanks for watching.